what are attack resistance, element resistance, and status element resistance? Is there a way we can counteract them? Well, I'm gonna be going through all of them in this video, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is VL, back with another video. Now, first off, before we dive in deep into the madness of different elements, resistant type, etc., I want to first go through some really basic stuff, but at the same time, essential enemy info UI that we have in this game. Again, timestamps will be in the description box below if you would like to skip to the certain ones that you want to know more about. So let's start things simple with an enemy here that has zero resistance or any kind of weakness or whatsoever. Now right off the top there is the element info with all these different type of elements shown here. So the elements icon are pretty straightforward, but I'm just gonna quickly read through these elements from left to right anyway. So we have fire, ice, thunder, water, earth, wind, holy, and dark. So not to be confused between the ice and water elements, since the kanji looks pretty similar. Well, as long as you remember light blue is ice and dark blue is water, then you'll be fine really. Now moving on, over here it shows the attack info with these three different icons. So from left to right, we have the melee icon and the range icon, which both of them, if grouped together, are also commonly known as the physical icon. And over here we have the magic icon. Okay, so lastly we have the status ailment info, which basically shows nothing now, but I will explain what it's all about in the later part of the video. So thankfully this enemy that we are tackling now isn't that much big of a threat, which helps a lot for making this intro video a breeze to explain with you guys. Let us give a big round of applause to this fantastic volunteer. Okay, let's kill it. Okay, sorry, that was just me doing my dailies. Let's just dive right back into the video and get into the meat and potato of this topic with us talking about what we should be talking about. So let's start off with the attack info first. So let's go over with the attack info graph first, since it's the easiest to explain for a start. Let's take a look at these three kanjis. What you're seeing over here stands for resist, meaning the enemy will take lesser brave damage if you try to attack it. As you can see, the word defense popped up if you were to try and hit it using the set resisted attack type. Now over here, this stands for highly resist, or also known as ineffective, which is what I will be calling it in this video. So what ineffective means is that you will deal even lesser brave damage if you try to, again, attack it with the set resisted attack type. Again, it would show the word defense as a sign that you're still hitting the enemy with the set resisted attack type. Now, I want to be clear here before we move on. Right now, the footage you're looking at is the gameplay footage from the JP server. So not to be confused with the global server, because instead of the word defense shown in the JP server. Global server uses the word resist instead. Right, so now that's out of the way, let's proceed on. So moving on, the question now is there a way to counteract these resistant attack type? Well, I'm glad to tell you that yes, there is. You will need to bring units that are able to imperil attack types. And as of now, there are only 4 characters of my knowledge that does the job. And that's Auron for melee imperil, Fran and Irvine for range imperil, and Hope for magic imperil. So now you might be wondering, what does Imperil do? Well, let's take a quick look over at the graph here first. So over here in this graph, as you can see, Absorb is the strongest of all, and if you were to imperil the enemy that starts off with Absorb, it goes down to Null, and it stays at Null despite you trying to repeatedly keep on imperiling it again. And same thing over here, if the enemy starts off as an ineffective attack type, it goes down to resist if you imperil it, like so in the video. So do take note, Imperil goes down only by a level and only once in this game, meaning it doesn't go down further if you were to repeatedly use the Imperil attack. And as of now, I don't think there's any character in this game that imperils down 2 levels or more. So now I will show you some compilation videos of me dealing an Imperil attack type, just to give you guys a clearer picture on how it works. First off, we have a clip of me just abusing this poor behemoth, trying to turn all of his 3 attack type from resist to neutral, as you can see in the clip. And lastly, from neutral to weak. So that was a quick look at how the attack type Imperil works in general in this game. And yes, weak is the weakest, or ironically the strongest way you can imperil an enemy in this game. As you can see, the word weak is shown when you hit an enemy that is attacked with the weak attack type. So if you're looking to abuse your enemies by imperiling them with the attack types, then the 4 units I mentioned earlier can do so. Wait, but what if I told you there is an easier and better way to imperil enemies? Remember this statement, as I will come back to it again later to talk about what the easier way is, because we need to first be able to read and understand the Ailment Info first, otherwise we'll just be getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves. Now, for the Ailment Info graph, sometimes you might see things like this, or something like this. Well, don't worry about the graph looking intimidating, because if you study the graph closer, you will see the enemy has no resistance to any attack type. Remember what we went through earlier? So this is where you exploit it by using a non-elemental attack of any of the 3 attack types to deal with the enemy. Now moving on, did you know that you can also imperil elements as well? So to imperil an element, of course, first you will require units that are able to imperil element. And the way you imperil elements is the same as per how you imperil attack types on the enemy. If you refer to the graph earlier, whatever rules it applies over imperiling attack types will also apply for imperiling an element as well. Here's Krile using her LD, turning Ramuh's Thunder is Up to Thunder Nile. And here's Kuja using his skill 1 to imperil the enemy, turning it from Holy Nile to Holy Ineffective. Here's Guy using his LD, turning the enemy from Earth Ineffective to Earth Resist. Here's Celes using her LD, turning the enemy from Ice Resist to Neutral. Alright, let's dive in even deeper by talking about element weakness overriding. Over here you see an enemy that is ineffective against range attack type. Let's imperil the enemy using Dark Knight Cecil's LD and we'll see what happens next. So what happened there? Isn't the enemy ineffective against range attack? So why is there a weak when Dark Knight Cecil is clearly using a range attack on the enemy? Well, that's because the element has been turned from neutral to weakness. But what about the attack type? The enemy is still clearly in ineffective state against range attack, isn't it? Well, the reason is because, and this is a huge one, element weakness will always override attack type ineffectiveness. Meaning, element weakness will always have priority even if the attack type were to state that it is ineffective. It doesn't really matter what element you imperil the enemy with, so long as the enemy element starts off in neutral state. Then, when you imperil it with an element, it'll be able to turn from neutral to weak, and so that's how we should fully utilize and deal more weaknesses damage to the enemies. So in a nutshell, that's how usually element imperil works. So my thoughts about element imperils versus attack type imperils. Well, sadly, attack type imperils seems to be the inferior type compared to element imperils. Moreover, we have a wider selection of units that is both a element enchanter and imperiler as well as compared to attack type imperils, which sadly we only have 4 units as of now. Okay, remember when I said that there is an easier way to go about this? Yeah, let's talk about that. Now let's take a look at another example. Seconds ago, I briefly stated that there are units that gives enchantment element to the entire party. Let's take a look at Cloud using his LD, which is an range attack. See the weak attack there? Wonder what happened? Enemy is ineffective against range. Cloud by default has no element infused in any of his attacks. So what happened there? Well, that's because Celes is not only an Imperiler, but also an Enchanter. What Enchanter does is that they enchant, or should I say, infuse an element to your entire party, which is ice for this case. And as you can see, Celes has Imperil the enemy with ice, and at the same time enchant the party with ice element as well. So even though the enemy is still ineffective against range, but because element weakness will always override the attack type ineffectiveness, therefore Cloud's LD is able to bypass that. Now, we still see a lot of players using Auron and Hope to imperil enemies with their attack types. Why is that? Aren't attack types imperilers more inferior to element imperilers? Well, that's because there will be certain stages where you will encounter enemies that are totally immune to element imperiling. Yeah. This is where the status ailment immunity comes in. So lastly, for status ailment, this one is easier, therefore shorter for me to explain. As you can see over here in the graph, there is a low rate, high rate, and immune. Low rate and high rate basically just means that the enemy has a lower rate or a higher rate chance to dodge whatever status ailment that they are strong against. And then for immune, basically it means it's a 100% dodge rate, meaning you won't reflect any status ailment thrown to them, as shown here. See, enemy is immune to poison. Shen Turtle's skill 2 isn't able to inflict poison on the enemy. Now here's a rare one. Remember earlier I mentioned you might encounter some enemies that are immune to element imperils? This is one of the fight. See here, Raijin is trying to use a thunder imperil on the enemy, but the enemy is totally immune to any element imperil. Hence, Raijin fails to imperil them. Yes, again, yes. Enemy is immune to element imperil. So this is one of the very rare fights we have where the enemies are totally immune to element imperils. And here's another one. The third boss rush event, if I remember correctly, the enemies are immune to element imperil as well. Yeah, my goodness. So in short, yeah, there is totally no way to counteract status ailment immunity. Now we are finally done explaining more or less everything. But I'm still not quite done yet. This video isn't really a complete guide if we don't experiment with some what if scenarios. Okay, ever wonder if the brave damage differences is huge between an enemy in ineffective state and resist state? Let's find out. Here's Terra attacking an enemy in magic ineffective state. Alright, so now the enemy is in magic resist state. Let's use the same attack and see what happens. Okay, so it's a slight difference. Bit of a pointless experiment, but hey, we learned something new. Next, what if you stack Ailment Imperil plus attack type Imperil? Will the brave damage be higher? Well, let's find out. Here's Terra again, attacking an enemy with a Earth enchantment, while the enemy is already imperiled with Earth. And here's Terra again, attacking an enemy altogether, including magic resist down to weak. Wow, that's a huge difference. From 2000 over brave damage to 4000 over brave damage. Nice! So we know Ailment Imperil plus attack type Imperil stacking works. Next, what if the enemy absorbs an element but is weak to the attack type? So here we have Onion Knight using his LD, which is both a melee and magic attacker. Well, as mentioned earlier, Ailment overrides all attack types, so it's a big no okay. Alright, okay, well that's enough brainstorming now. I'm gonna have to end this experimenting here, otherwise we're all gonna be stuck in limbo, fooling around with the game mechanics. I think we've gone long enough for this video. Alright, so before I end this video, I would like to thank Ram from the Dissidia Database. We had a little discussion about this Imperil table graph here, and I had to triple check with Ram just to make sure that I've got everything right first. Otherwise, this video wouldn't have happened. So big thank you to Ram, and if you guys don't know who Ram is, he has a website that gives information about all the characters, upcoming and current events, spear infos, etc, etc. Lastly, I would like to thank all of you guys for watching this video till the very end. That means a lot to me despite knowing how lengthy this video is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do give a thumbs up if you liked it, dislike it if not. And until we talk again, see you later.